Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to the Lifeonaire show, where we help people create lives and businesses they love and that they jump out of bed for, excited because they get to do things that they love every single day. And so I am your host, Jason Wojo, and I'm joined by my co-host, partner in crime, Polish Peter. Peter, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here. I just want to point out as a disclaimer, I am not a partner in crime, okay? There is no crime. I'm just a partner in here, so I don't know what he's talking about, okay?
Are you worried about immigration finding out about that? Is that why you mentioned that?
No, I am a U.S. citizen, people, okay?
Okay.
Just want to put it out here so it's on the record.
So listen, everyone, today we're talking about something that's really important, and that is objections. Now, you hear, or, and we're going to talk about objections in terms a little bit about the things that people often say when they hear about Lifeonaire, and they think that it's too good to be true, like, or oh, that works for so and so, but it's not going to work for me, or that's pie in the sky stuff. That's not real. Like we're going to talk about some of these things with the founder of Lifeonaire, Steve Cook, who's going to be on this episode with us.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're even struggling, like you started working on your vision or start looking at that kind of stuff and you have some reservations or you're getting stopped, I would have you listen to this episode carefully, because we answer a lot of those kinds of things that, it's going to help you get to the next level and help you get to the next step of this entire process.
Yeah. So if you find yourself kind of learning about the Lifeonaire stuff and you're like, it sounds, I'm not even sure if this is realistic, listen to this episode. Let's jump in right now and see what we can come up with. All right. See you over there. Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to the Lifeonaire show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo, and on this show, we help people create better lives, better businesses. We help people create a life and a business they love, and we'd love to walk that journey with you. I am joined by my co-host, Polish Peter. Polish Peter, what's up, buddy?
Hey man, how's it going? I'm just happy to be here, and it seems like as we're going through these episodes, I'm getting younger. And about you?
Yeah, dude, I think it's your lighting. Actually, I'm looking at the lighting here, and it looks pretty. You must have like some baluster lights
sunshine
on you right now.
Yeah, sunshine.
Okay, it's sunshine. We'll go with sunshine. Hey, and listen, everyone, we are very blessed to have a very special guest on the line today. We have Steve Cook, the founder of Lifeonaire. He's been on a few episodes with us already, and we get to hear from the man himself, the founder. And in this episode, we are going to talk about something. Peter, I hear these a lot, and you may as well. And Steve, I'm guessing you do too. What are some of the reasons Lifeonaire won't work for me? Or it sounds too good to be true? Or like, yeah, come on. I mean, yeah, this sounds great and we can all hold hands and sing Kumbaya, but like life is life. It's supposed to be hard. I want to talk about some of the objections we get. What are some of the things and the reasons and excuses people come up with, like why this isn't for them? Because like, if someone would take the time to at least understand the message, and let's assume that people understand a little bit of what we're talking about, they have a little context, but after, like, say they read the Lifeonaire book, and they're like, yeah, that sounds great, but there's a big but after that. And I know, Peter, you like to say, like, you only have one but, you don't need another one. And so what I want to hear from you guys, Peter, why don't you go first? Like, what's something you commonly hear from people about why they can't do this?
Well, one of the things that I hear constantly, but you don't know my story. You don't know where I'm come from. You don't know my situation, right? And they start telling us like what it is, like maybe, a mother or whoever it is, or, like me being an immigrant, basically. What I see a lot is people, they basically, since they were a kid, they were told you're a doctor or lawyer or whatever it might be, right? So you don't know my situation. It's too good to be true, right? And that is one of those things because one of the things I think people don't understand is because they've never experienced it, so they don't know what it's actually going to look like. And my thing, I ask them like, well, what do you want? Right? And that's one of the first things I ask them, and they start to kind of experiment with that. What do you think, Steve?
Well, I think Jason sat there and he sort of prepped this question by saying, let's assume that the person really does understand, that they did get it. I don't know that there's anybody who really does understand and gets it that doesn't move forward with it. I think that they still have a lack of understanding. They still think that they know better, or they still, they're so conditioned in other ways that it's really difficult for them to believe that what we're telling them and our experiences are true. And so it is countercultural to what they have heard for so many years. And so people naturally just go against something new. As good as it sounds, they might feel like, oh, it's too good to be true, or that's not what my mother's been telling me for the last 40 years. And so, I love my mother, I respect my mother, and, she must be right and you must be wrong. Or, when I went to college, they told me that this is what successful people do, and you're telling me to do something different. And, so I think it has more to do with a lack of understanding. The thing that I feel is when people actually get that aha and they read it. I mean, we see that happening. I mean, there's people who pick up a copy of the Lifeonaire book, they read through it one night, and they wake up the next morning and they're telling their spouse, we're changing the way we live. We're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing. I mean, they got it, they understood it, and they really made it happen. And then there's others who they just didn't quite get it yet. They might need to go back and read the book a second time, or come to one of our events. But I feel as though that when they do get it, they run with it.
See, now, so let's, and I would like all of us to kind of like poke at each other here a little bit, and play devil's advocate a little bit if we can. Thank you. Poke.
Poking virtually.
Right. Ow, stop. What? So, for instance, Steve, I've had people read the book and come up to me and say, that's great, but I'm not a real estate investor and I don't have a business. I have to work. I have a full-time job. My boss makes me work overtime, and I have no choices, because, my wife doesn't work because she has some illness or disability, and I have 14 kids. I've had those discussions. Like, how have you handled those?
Well, the first thing is, I wonder if they really read the book, because the book doesn't say that you have to be a real estate investor or have your own business to do it.
True.
And so they're already approaching it with a preconceived notion as they go into it, because that's not what the story suggests. In fact, the story actually suggests other things. And so with that in mind, again, they're still dealing with conditioning that they have to break through. And when people can come up with a clear picture that of what it is that they want, and they're willing to embrace it, they'll figure a way out of it. They'll get a path out of it. Now, I use extreme examples sometimes for people to help them to overcome some of those disbeliefs that they have, or their doubts. The reality of the situation is, if that person who is saying, well, I can't do this and I can't do that, and there's no way I could free up the time, if their spouse was injured really bad or developed an illness and now needed a lot more care, that person would figure out how to do it and get it done, and they wouldn't make excuses. If somebody offered that person an extra week's vacation if they completed all their work, and paid for vacation, and everything was taken care of, and as long as they completed their work by such and such a date so that they could leave on time, they'd complete their work. They would get things done when there was something that they really wanted. And so the problem is they haven't come up with a vision that they really want yet. And that's where it all boils down to, is that clear vision. And when they have it and they embrace it, there's nothing that can stop them. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Peter, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because one of the things I keep going back to in my head as you're sharing, Steve, is once you get it, right, and you see that there is the possibility for you, all of a sudden, I've seen people do some drastic things in their life to get the life that they want, right? And that is one of those things that is really important to kind of like be a little bit coachable in that regard. Because I think for a lot of people, when they come up to us and say, listen, okay, good. I mean, I see what you guys are saying. I see what this thing is about, whatever. But being a little bit coachable opens you up that there's possibility that you could get something like this. You could have a life like this, And I think that is the common denominator across a lot of the people when they do become that coachable, become open to it, to the idea. they start developing, they start having conversation with their significant other, they start having conversation with themselves and look for, okay, how could I do this actually? What could I do? What's the life going to look like?
Yeah. So I'd say that's accurate. Sometimes I've seen people, it's so much easier. Well, first of all, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, right? And so when people are afraid of failing, and they're afraid to be disappointed, and I think that's one thing that some people will put up resistance to a new idea, especially if it goes against cultural norms. Not only because this seems so different than what they've known in the past, but also like I don't want to be disappointed. Like, this Lifeonaire way of living sounds incredible, and gosh, if I don't do it, it's gonna be one more thing I've failed at. Once you can get them past that, what I've found is that many times the objections that they'll come up with are kind of, I'm not going to say they're fake. They're real to these people, but a brief discussion with them often helps them understand like how weak those arguments are. So, for instance, I've had people say like, "Hey, my boss won't let me work less," and I'll say, "Have you even asked?" And they'll be like, "Well, no, because I know he's not gonna or she's not gonna." To which I'll tell you so that as simple as that. They haven't even scratched the surface as to thinking of a way to overcome this objection. Instead, they kind of just put themselves at the feet of whatever obstacle or roadblock is in their way. And so, we've seen this happen just in that instance alone. So many things happen where people have been able to work from home, or people have been able to cut their hours and retain their salary simply because they're producing the same output. But it's just a super simple example of like how people haven't even dove in on a superficial level to overcome some of these objections. And another one I hear is like, well, I need to make all this money. And I'll be like, well, why do you need to make all the money? Well, because I have all these expenses. All right, well, tell me about that. And come to find out, they just leased a brand new F-250, and it's costing them $600 a month. And they have this big house, and they've created this lifestyle for themselves, but they haven't asked themselves this question, like, how can I simplify my life so that I don't need to make this much money? It's these real simple things. But as we start diving into these objections, you start to see people's model of the world. Like what have they been living? In what way they've been living has it shown what's most important to them? Like, so for instance, when I'd ask the guy, like, and it'll say like, I need the truck. And I'm like, okay, why do you need the truck? Well, because I have a business. And I have a landscaping business, and I have to pull up to customers' homes and clients' homes, and I need to have this professional looking truck, or else it's going to hurt my business. I've heard the same thing like for realtors. I've heard the same thing for an attorney. Like I've heard that. So you start to kind of see how tangible these challenges really are, but also how easy they are to overcome if you kind of dive into them rather than take them at face value. Steve, have you experienced some of this yourself?
I have all the time. And I think I'm just going to keep going right back to the thing that I was suggesting. That person doesn't have a clear vision of what they want. And what you just explained, using a truck as an example, by the way, the payment on an F-250 is probably about $1,200 a month for most people who have them. But their vision is being written by somebody else. The person expects me to be driving up in a nice vehicle, which is why I have to have it. They don't have a clear vision for their own life. They're letting somebody else dictate what they have to do, how much they have to spend, how much they have to work in order to live up to somebody else's standard. But that was exactly the objection that they had in those particular instances. Well, this is what other people expect of me. And the question needs to be, well, forget about them. What do you want? What do you want out of your life?
What just struck me, Steve, not to interrupt, but I think everyone that has any of these doubts or objections in their head needs to, maybe even the first step they need to do is do an inventory of every part of their life and say, is this mine, or was this created by somebody else and I kind of just thought I had to do this because of the expectations of whoever? And that might give you a really good litmus test. It's like how much of your life is yours right now and designed by you versus other people.
That's a hard thing for people to even do, because they honestly have gotten to the point where they believe they want it. And, to me, it's a sad thing. And I'm going to actually back up a little bit. When we were talking about when people they say that they get it, but I can't have that. That'll never happen for me. And there are some people who have really started to convince themselves that I can't have a good life. I'm not supposed to have a good life. This is the life I was meant to have. I'm meant to do this. And that doesn't mean, hey, there's anything wrong with working. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with working a job as even a janitor in a factory. I know of 2 guys right now who are some of the most joy-filled people I could ever come across, who live incredible lives, from making a difference in the lives of people. One of them works at McDonald's, and he's the talk of the town because he just lives an experienced life. And so what I want to be careful of is not to suggest, hey, this even has anything to do with the career. It has everything to do with what a person wants for themselves, and getting in touch with who they are and living the life that they want to live, and not letting somebody else tell them, well, you are not born into having a good life, or you can't ever have those nice things because you're just not the right person to have it, or whatever it might be. All the objections are still rooted in people's disbelief that they can have a better life. And they just haven't embraced the life that they want because they don't even know what that looks like. So that's where I tend to fall with it. So Peter's got some.
Peter, I need you to comment on this because this is right down your alley.
Yeah, I mean, so that leads me to another objection because when we do our Lifeonaire 3-day, Get a Life getaways, that people come up to me sometimes, especially on day 2 when we're actually looking and diving into writing this vision. I have people come up to me because they've been, let's say, working for somebody else, or they've been in their 40s, 50s, or whatever it might be, where they've been living that life certain way, and we ask them, what do you want? I have a lot of time people come up to me and say, I don't know what I want. They literally just have a blank page and they're like, I don't know what I want. And sometimes I think that comes from the place of they're afraid that they might actually get it, right? And sometimes I think it's coming from the place of man, I just don't know. I've been living this life this whole time and I don't know what I want. And that's, sometimes it's hard for people to actually grasp that. So, I mean, what do you think about this particular kind of a thing?
Well, I want to, Steve, I want to really highlight something, Stephen, and I don't know if there's an easy answer to this, by the way, because I know everyone's different. Steve, you said sometimes people they just don't think they can do it, because of their upbringing or because of their background or their who knows, they've had a cursed family tree, right? How do you show somebody this is possible? How do you overcome that mindset challenge? I mean, I know everyone's a little bit different. One of the ways that and I'm not even sure this is a super effective way, but it's one way nonetheless, is by showing other people that are doing it that are no smarter than this other person. They're just further down the path, and that maybe can inspire a little bit of hope. But how do we really encourage people and show them that this is actually possible? And get them to give that first stab, right? Because if once they start making momentum, now they can help themselves. But getting them to believe in this,
that is a hard one. I mean, you opened that up by saying, this is a hard one. What do we do? And I'm going to give my typical answer. It depends. It depends upon the person. It depends upon where they're at in the process. It depends upon what I can see in them. And in some cases, there are some people who are just so far gone and who just want to be argumentative. And I just have to sort of let them go and say, well, just keep on doing it your way. And, and when you get tired of that, come back and let's talk. And I just have to back off. When somebody is showing any glimmer of, hope. And typically the reason why I'm even having these conversations with people in the first place is because I live by example, and they see what I have, and they see how I live, and they want to have, some of the things that I have in my life in their life. They want to have better relationships. They want their marriages to be better. They want to have the freedom that my family has. And so the discussions will originate from that. And as I begin to sort of poke and prod and ask questions of them, once I can see that there's some hope, that I can hopefully get them to that point where they can see more clearly. I just remain committed to that person. And you'll be surprised that there's sometimes when some people come around very quickly, others take a very long time, but that commitment of someone being willing to keep on putting truth in front of them, because the moment I'm finished talking to them and they leave and they're no longer in my presence, they're now surrounding themselves with the same people who are giving them the exact opposite message.
Yeah.
And so they're continuously going back to the old message, and they need to keep hearing the new one as often as they can. So just as a quick example, I took on a student a little over a year ago who I recognized was going to be one of the hardest I ever dealt with. And after I kept on and kept pursuing him, one of the things that he just came right out and he asked me, he said, "Why do you care about me? No one else has ever sat here and taken the time to keep on asking me how am I doing and to keep checking in with me and to see how I am." And I thought, it was interesting. I said, because I do. I just want to, I believe that there's so much more that you could be living and experiencing. And if I can help you, I want to be there for you. And to make a long story short, his life has completely changed today, from being one of the most stressed out people that I had ever met. I won't go into all of the details, but to my last conversation with him, I said, "How are you?" He said, "Man, I am the best I have ever been." And he just started rattling off and telling me everything that was going on. And that was about a year's worth of, reaching out here and there, talking to him, and his life is completely flipped upside down.
Yeah, and I think, Steve, a lot of times people are so jaded, by life, all the different circumstances and everything they went through. And like in this guy's particular, life, nobody ever reached out to him, asked him what he wants, and been there for him and all that kind of stuff. And he probably felt like he's been all alone his whole entire life, And finally somebody comes along and, is this guy really, serious? Is he actually being there for me, And so I think sometimes, when we have someone like that in our life, it helps a lot. And, that's what the guy experienced. And all of a sudden now he came out of his shell and he's able to get the life that he wants,
So I want to just throw this out there. He knew he wanted something more, but all the examples in his life, no one was showing him how to do it.
Right.
And so that was a big thing. And that's why we so recommend this. You got to surround yourself with other people. You have to remove yourself sometimes from the environment that has been conditioning you to live the way that you have been living. And we find that when people start surrounding themselves with other Lifeonaires, their life starts to change, just because they now believe that they can do it. They have a different mentality, a different philosophy of living that the people around them are living. And they start to see the possibilities. And apart from being there, with others who are doing it, it's much harder to see the possibilities.
Yeah. Well, and so I'm hearing a couple things. One is in this case, in the story you mentioned, Steve, it's the repeated exposure and kind of pouring into someone that really influences somebody over time. It's almost like you're walking this journey alongside them. And also in certain cases, like being around, and of course, you know this intuitively, but like, if you're trying to lose weight, don't hang out with a bunch of people who are overeating all the time and going to the bar and eating pizza and wings. Like, that's not going to help you. And in your head, you're going to look at them and say, look at all of them. They're all overweight. Like, why would I be any different? Well, it's because the environment you've set yourself up into is not nourishing you. It's not helping you grow in the direction you want to grow. And same thing with any other part of our lives, so much more so for our overall life itself. And so, I always like to say, instead of like-minded people, I like to say life-minded people that can pour into you and keep you accountable, but also not just for the modeling, but so you can borrow their faith. And when they believe in you and you see what they have and they're like, well, they've done this for themselves and they believe in me. Like, so maybe they see something I don't see. And so they borrow that faith from the people who pour into them. And that's powerful too.
On that note, real quick, within the Lifeonaire community, you talked about borrowing your faith. The beauty is within the Lifeonaire community is that others who have already been there and done that, they know others can do it too.
Yeah.
And so that sometimes they seem to believe more in you than you believe in yourself to start out with, because I just know, and it actually warms my heart when someone new can come into the community, how others just embrace them. And because they're now so excited to see somebody else just flourish in life. And it's a pretty awesome feeling when you surround yourself with people who know, first of all, that you can have it, but they might even believe more in you than you believe in it for yourself. That ultimately isn't going to carry you, but that ultimately will make you say, you know what, if they think I can do it, I can do it too. And then you got to take ownership of it, make it happen.
Right. And there's nothing like, if you start moving in this direction, it doesn't happen overnight, but you start to see progress. And now once you've kind of gotten past that initial resistance, you overcome that initial inertia and you start to see results. Now you're encouraged. I remember, when I started first lifting weights, I was 20 years old, super, super skinny kid my whole life. I thought I'd always be skinny. Well, I gained 6 pounds in the first 2 months of training, and I was hooked. I was like, whoa, this actually works. This is incredible. And since then, that first 2 months, I didn't see a whole lot of changes in my body. I was kind of getting discouraged. And then I start seeing some changes pretty rapidly, and it changed everything for me. And so I would encourage anyone who's feeling like this isn't something that you can do or it's possible. Number one, absolutely get around the right people. Let people pour into you. Let people be part of your journey. But two, make a commitment to take some steps here. Go on a 2 or 3 month life diet where you're going to move towards this life that you want, and so you can start to see some of these results for yourself. And now, Peter, this also reminds me of we show this diagram at the Get a Life Getaway, that your beliefs will change your behaviors, which then change your results. And so if you believe this is possible, maybe even if you're borrowing someone else's faith, that's okay. Right. You'll start to do the things that'll generate the results that will prove this works, and it becomes a self-fulfilling cycle.
Yeah, that's an important distinction, because I think most people in life, what they're focusing is changing their behavior, right? They're focusing on changing, okay, I need to go to the gym, right? And they go there to the gym for 2, 3, 4, or 5 times, maybe a couple of weeks, and they don't really see the real change. Like all of a sudden they're going to drop 10 pounds. And now guess what? They believe is well, I'm just that kind of a person. I'm big boned or whatever. So if their belief hasn't changed, the behavior pretty quickly is going to go back to the same old behavior. And that's this reoccurring cycle that keeps going on and on and on. So surrounding yourself with those like-minded people who are there coming alongside of you to help you get the life that you want, or who have already been there, who are doing it, who can encourage you, who can, not judge you, right? And be there for you in that way, coming from the place of love. And it's important because it's going to help you start changing those beliefs. And I think that's a really cool thing that we have developed in Lifeonaire as a culture, that people can come alongside and we can encourage them. We can bring them to a place where, I am, somebody who can actually do this. And we've seen some tremendous changes in people, not only from, health but personal life, and, fathers who have never been there for their kids. Now they're very present fathers, and people who drop a lot of weight, and all kinds of different situations. But those kinds of stories, right? One of the things when people have objections with me, I'm just, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me your story, right? And then because once I know what their story is, I have 1,500 different examples of similar stories to what they have been. And that kind of helps them see a different way.
Awesome. I'm sort of seeing that we started this out hey, what are some of the objections? And, for somebody that started out with, they don't really understand it. They don't really get it. And part of that is because of the culture and everything they're surrounding themselves with. That's, always saying, well, that's not possible. And this is the way you're supposed to do things. To, fast forwarding that if that is a struggle for you and that you have a hard time with the culture, change your surroundings, get around people who think different. And, we understand that doesn't mean you pick up and move out of the house that you're living in and tell everybody who you're closest to that you can't do that. But you do have to bring other influences into your life. And that's the thing that I'm so passionate about when it comes to the Lifeonaire community. People can easily plug into the Lifeonaire community and surround themselves with people who think differently, who have a very positive outlook, who believe that in you and that you can do whatever you want. And when you get in there and you start sharing, being honest and vulnerable, here's my struggles, here's why I don't think life is for me. You're going to have people come along and tell you, well, I thought that same thing, but here's where I'm at today. And here's how I did it. And so it does, at the end of the day, I think they just don't believe it. And they didn't quite grasp it yet. And then once they do, it opens up all kinds of pathways for them to get there.
There's that belief. And by the way, if a Polak can do it, who barely spoke any English, anybody can do it.
Right. Okay.
And he's still
that's indisputable,
struggle,
right? Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
Well, listen, this is awesome, Steve. And so we have like this importance of the community is incredibly important. Whether you're talking about understanding or belief, right? Like they both can be helped by getting involved in the community. If you haven't yet, go check out our app. It is free. It's fantastic. There's all kinds of great conversations and discussions going on over there. Be part of that. You can jump in, or you can lurk like a creep or two. That's all right. You're still welcome. You can still benefit that way. You can get it on iTunes or the Android store. Is it Google Play Store? Forgive my ignorance here. Or you can go to lifeonaire.com and you'll find a link for the desktop version as well. And just start somewhere. Start moving on this path, because your belief and the understanding will change. And as that does, now it will give you kind of the freedom and the awareness and the enlightenment to start making the changes that you need to make, to start identifying what it is you want your life to look like, because this is something like I think we're all right now in agreement on that this is something everyone can experience. Steve, thanks for being on the episode. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you in hopefully in an upcoming episode as well. And thanks for the super contributions. Wow, man. What did you think?
I think it was a great episode because, not only did we dive into some of the objections, but I think we got a little bit deeper actually into the whole entire process and how the Lifeonaire principles and the vision and all that stuff works to flush some of the stuff out.
Dude, it's so true. Like we talked about how people are afraid to try stuff, I feel like, and people are so beat down where they are so used to doing things a certain way that they don't like stepping out of that, and I heard this said once, and I love it. It says like grooves become ruts. So you're in a groove in life. Things are going like okay. You're like, this is kind of what life is supposed to be like. This is the way it's. How many times have you heard people say, by the way, man, my life story, right? Like, and so people, we not realizing they're actually writing their own story. They don't embrace something new because they're afraid of the change. They're afraid of failing. They're afraid of what if I'm disappointed. They're afraid of what other people will think of me. Like, We've had episodes where Steve Cook has talked about people thought he was nuts for some of the things that he was doing in his life and his business when he started downsizing and simplifying. And so there's all these fears, and there's the belief of, we focus on the belief, like, is this something that can actually happen for me? It might happen for Steve Cook because he's a really smart guy, or it might happen for Wojo because he's a PhD, right? Which, by the way, let me tell you right now.
I don't think they say that.
Someone might have said that once. But here's the truth, by the way, for any of you thinking that, I can tell you a PhD has not helped at all. And in fact, it's probably hindered me more than anything else. All right. And so, or they might say, it works for Polish Peter because like he's Polish, right? Whatever the reason is.
Has an accent. Yeah.
Right.
No, but on the serious side of things, I want you guys to consider this. It's something that just popped into my head as you're sharing this is, the whole word but, you kind of joked on it. And I say this all the time. You already have one but in the episode. You said you already have one but. You don't need another one, right? But think about it. If you have this vision or whatever you're going through about Lifeonaire or whatever it might be, if that but comes up for you, consider that objection is very similar in a whole bunch of different areas of your life. So whether you realize it or not, you've been living certain way and you have been designing your life in a certain way. It's just sometimes has not been deliberate. Now you actually get to design the life and start living the life deliberately because you get to put your vision in, right? And that is a cool, I think, refreshing way of looking at it, because it's not so much like it could be scary. Because listen, up until before I knew Lifeonaire, if I really think about it, I have been designing my own life. It just was so happened that the way I was designing my life is based on what other people are telling me.
Yeah.
And then when I finally found out about Lifeonaire, I started designing my life based on what I wanted. And that was a huge difference.
Right.
And I got a lot more control.
Absolutely. So I would encourage anyone, if you're struggling with this, like believing it's either it's too hard or, we can go down a laundry list. Peter, one of the exercises we do at our Get a Life Getaway is we have people write down all the reasons they can't live this life. Right. And for those of you guys who have never been to our event, you got to check it out. We have all these people throw this piece of paper and we read them. And we've heard everything from I'm not smart enough to, I don't have a support system to I don't have the knowledge to
the money.
Yeah. There's excuse. Well, I don't even want to say an excuse. Some of them are excuses. But to most people, these are real, right? They're real. But I want to challenge you really in a loving way to look at these and see if how much validity is there here? How much water do these truly hold? Like if you really, really, really wanted to live this life, could you? And I'm not saying it wouldn't require changes. Clearly it would. But could you, I want you to really creatively look at these things and say, how could I solve this if I wanted to? If I wanted to overcome this challenge, what would I do? All right? And that's one of the most important things I want you to consider, because I know that everyone's situation and circumstances are different, but I promise you the life that you deserve and the one you've dreamed about awaits, and it's waiting for you to seize it. Anything else you want to say, Peter?
Yeah, just popped into my head. If you have those kinds of objections as you're listening to this particular podcast, hop on the app, ask us in there, and we can handle. Maybe we'll create another episode based on one of these things to kind of work through this and kind of break some of those beliefs and all that kind of stuff. So
great
jump
suggestion.
on there and talk to us. Okay.
All right. So let's wrap it up here. If you are not part of the Lifeonaire app yet, go ahead and download that now. Be part of the conversation. Join our community, and you can get all kinds of great feedback, support, encouragement, ideas. Be part of those discussions. Also, we would love to hear from you. Please leave us feedback wherever you download this podcast. We'd love to hear what you think of the show. And the third thing I would say is Peter, I don't have a third thing. Do you have anything right now that you could come up with on the spur of the moment? When you
leave the reviews, say how great Peter is. Wojo needs to polish up.
Okay.
Polish up.
Polish. All right. Yeah. And so clearly you can leave out any of the comments about bad jokes. We're working on it. That's one area of our vision we're still working on. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We will see you next time.